to the show. It's time now for our head-to-head. OK, now, the UK's latest net migration figures came out at a staggering 685,000. Yes, you heard that right. That's despite years of Tory promises to reduce them significantly. And with immigration expected to be a key election issue in the coming weeks, Britain's political leaders have been setting out their policies with some glaringly obvious omissions. Rishi Sunak, he says the Conservatives will impose an annual cap on immigration visas, but ministers are refusing to give a figure for their target reduction in migration. Labour say they would reduce the need for foreign workers by training up British people to do the jobs instead. Where have we heard that before? But again, they won't commit to any definite targets either.
Well, again, and I understand the question, and I know that you're effectively trying to suggest I set a target or a broad target. I'm not going to do that. We are going to be clear. Net migration must come down. We believe it's really important, and what Keir has set out is commitments that we will bring net migration down.
Meanwhile, Reform UK wants to aim for zero net migration, meaning we'd only allow as many people into the country as were leaving in the same period. And the Lib Dems, they plan to scrap the Rwanda plan. There's Ed Davey coming off his paddleboard. They want to scrap the Rwanda plan to provide more safe and legal routes for refugees, lift the ban on asylum seekers working in the UK, and shift Home Office powers over work visas, overseas students and asylum to other government departments. So tonight I'm asking, as party leaders refuse to put a number on appropriate levels of immigration, is Britain full? Let me know your thoughts by heading to gbnews.com/your say or tweet me at gbnews, and while you're there, why not vote in the poll? Results coming very, very shortly. But first, going head-to-head on this are content lead at Migration Central, Charlie Downs, and immigration lawyer Ivan Sampson. Good evening to you both. Thank you for joining us on this momentous evening. Charlie, is Britain full?
There is no other answer to this question. Of course it is. Of course Britain is full. Our public services are grinding to a halt. People can't get spaces in schools for their children. The roads are clogged up and full of potholes. Public transport, the same story. Of course Britain is full. Britain, in the 20th century, Britain had a population of about 50 million, between 50 and 60 million. And in the post-war period, most of our infrastructure that we rely on today was built to sustain about that many people. Today, we have estimates vary, but we have about 70 million in the country. So we're well beyond what our infrastructure was built to sustain. So, yes, of course, Britain.
But Charlie, you think that figure of 70-odd million is far too low, don't you? You think there's plenty of uncounted bodies in the UK?
There's much to say on this subject. So 70 million or thereabouts is the official Office for National Statistics estimate. Now, in 2007, it was predicted by certain supermarkets that the population could be as high as 77 million. Now, this was 2007. And the supermarkets are a relatively reliable source for this kind of information because, of course, they know how much food is being consumed. And their estimates, as I say, were more in the vicinity of 80 million. So if that was 2007, you know, we can only wonder what it is today. We don't know. The point is, we don't know what the population of the United Kingdom is.
Ivan, the supermarkets and their insurers, they've done some quite significant work on this, as Charlie suggested. They reckon Britain is full. Do you agree with that? Are you happy to go along with it?
No, not at all. Look, we don't have enough workers. We need workers to pay taxes to pay for our public services. And the reality is there's simply no data to support what Charlie is saying, that migrants are causing the backlog in NHS waiting lists or causing a shortage in the housing market. Let me make it quite clear. Migrants are not entitled to benefits. They pay for their care, so the NHS treatment they get, they paid for it twice. Once an annual charge and also NI contribution. So they're actually paying double for the service they may or may not get.
Well, Ivan, let's talk about housing. Sorry to interject. We need to build a new house every 2 minutes to keep up with current migration demand.
Well, where's the evidence? I mean, you make these sweeping statements, and where's the evidence? Where's the data which supports that? If you look at the ONS report, it simply doesn't say that.
Charlie?
So I disagree wholeheartedly with the premise that migration is bad.
Okay.
I mean, it's an election point to garnish votes. That's why, blame the migrants for our roads not being fixed, blame the migrants for we're not having enough houses. The solution is to build more houses.
Okay, Charlie, let me bring Charlie in because we're quite strapped for time. Charlie, you're talking pie in the sky. You're just scaremongering about migrants.
Well, let's be clear about one thing here. Ivan is somebody who directly benefits from the mass migration industry. He's an immigration lawyer who helps students and others with visas. Now, let's talk about health and social care visas. Last year, half of the health and social care visas that were handed out were given to the dependents of those who came here to work. So for as much talk as there is about how the NHS relies on migrants for workers, it simply doesn't, because these workers are bringing along people with them who are taking from the system. And so it ends up as a net negative. But furthermore, when it comes to students, Ivan, I know you're an expert on this subject, they too bring dependents and they too take from the NHS. Now, I don't need to tell you, anybody in the audience who's my age, I'm 22 years old, I don't need to tell you how expensive and how much of an unlikely prospect it is that I will ever own a house because of how expensive and inflated the market is. And there is no other reason for that than migration, because the native population is not growing, it is shrinking. And the only reason that housing ever gets more expensive is simply a supply to demand ratio. We do not have enough supply to meet the demand, and that is only because of migration.
Ivan, can I ask you, you surely agree that there's a housing crisis, that the NHS is jam-packed, waiting lists are extraordinary, there are record numbers. Nothing really works anymore, does it? You agree with that sentiment, first of all? First part of my question.
Yeah, I do agree with that.
Okay. Let me follow that up. Let me follow that up. So you agree with that. So why would it make sense to continue welcoming a city the size of Birmingham every 2 years, knowing that?
Because these migrants are paying taxes which are paying for our public services. The reality is that we are bringing skilled workers into this country because we don't have enough. I'm all for settled workers, British people and those with settled status to have British jobs. I'm all for that.
Ivan, what data are you basing the notion that migrants contribute in their taxes
If you don't interrupt me, Charlie, I'm all for that. However, that's a long-term plan. I work with companies from various sectors, airlines, sports companies, fashion companies, and the CEOs tell me the same thing, that they'd rather recruit British workers. They can't find them. So what do you want them to do? Not recruit them?
Charlie, very briefly, we're running out of time. 20 seconds. Last word to you.
Look, I think this conversation is done with. Again, I would encourage viewers to look into Ivan's background and understand that he's somebody who directly benefits from the kind of mass migration that we've had to this country for the last 30 years. Now, the contributions of migrants to taxes is well known that they are not as high as we are told they are. The Office for Budget Responsibility has massively overstated the contribution of migrants to the tune of billions. I think that's all that needs to be said.
All right, thank you both for joining us this evening. Very much appreciated for your time. That's content lead at Migration Central, Charlie Downs, and immigration lawyer, Ivan Sampson. Let us know what you